It is preview season here on Armchair Analysis, and we're in the home stretch. It's Iowa State today. The Cyclones in 2025 looking to improve or really get that next step. Big 12 runners up last year, 11-3, 7-2 in 2024. Can they repeat it? Can they make their way back to Dallas this year? We'll talk about all that and more here on Armchair Analysis. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for the support. We hit 150 subscribers before the end of the month, which is absolutely awesome. However, there's now a new goal in place. Are you always looking to improve? By week 0, I'd like to be at 200 subscribers. I think we can get the job done, but I just cannot thank you guys enough. This has been so much fun. Enjoying the back and forth, good and bad. I really don't care. I love seeing like the negative comments, even if there's no base to them. I love seeing them because it reminds me that there's still ways to improve, because you can't make everybody happy, but you can try. And I just hope that this content continues to get better and you guys continue to enjoy it. So with all that said, with all the pandering out of the way, let's go ahead and actually talk about this Iowa State team in 2025. And when we look back at last year, it's plain and simple. I already mentioned it. 11-3, 7-2 in Big 12 play. Losing in the Big 12 title game to Arizona State. They absolutely just ran off the field by Arizona State, but I don't think there were many teams at the end of the year that were capable of hanging with the Sun Devils last year. What they did do was force Cam Ward out of the bowl game early, and they would have an incredible game, win it by 1 point, 42-41, over the Miami Hurricanes. They built some momentum for this year, but there's a lot of things still to improve on. This team last year was had a points per game average of 31.1. It was 42nd in college football on the offensive side. Defensively allowing 22.9 points per game, 41st in the sport right now. Turnover margin plus 0.6, that's 22nd in college football. Bringing a 55th overall recruited class and a 59th ranked portal class, only 8 commitments, but they do make some really big changes in said commitments. Matt Campbell returns for what I believe is to be his 10th season this year, and that's incredible. We don't often talk about people who are highly sought after staying at one school for 10 years or even anywhere close. And there's been multiple rumors and multiple times where the rumor mill floats that Matt Campbell is going to get picked up by I won't say a blue blood, but the Michigan job came open and Matt Campbell's name was in that conversation back then. Back then, a couple years ago. The Michigan State job came open and his name was in the conversation. It was similarly to when the Texas job came open a handful of years ago. His name just kind of floats around in a lot of these circles when it comes down to a big change to be made. And yet doing that and still sticking around at Iowa State shows the continuity, shows the love he has for the program, and the true willingness to continue to put this team in a spot where they are a perennial contender in the Big 12. Taylor Mauser back at offensive coordinator yet again this year. John Heacock comes back as the defensive coordinator. They're looking for a lot of improvement on both sides of the ball, and a lot of that comes down to just simply health. This team has 6 returning starters on the offensive side of the ball, to include quarterback Rocco Becht, who a lot of people are expecting some big things out of. I don't know if he's quite... I don't really know what the status would be of him if the season ended today, whether or not he would go to the draft or not. But Rocco Becht is certainly the guy for the job, and there is no questioning that, barring injury. Carson Hansen came in and kind of took over the running back spot last year, and it was a bit of a surprise because I think for a lot of people, we saw Abu Sama, we see all the highlights, and everybody expected that he was going to be the guy for the job, and it was very quickly taken away from him by Carson Hansen, who ended up being better in pretty much any category other than maybe the big play. Hansen's going to be a guy that I think both these guys truly are going to take a lot of the load this year, especially early on as they kind of figure out the receiver room, because that's where the most change happens. When you got to replace over 2,300 yards, I think it is 2,377 yards of receiving from last year between Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, both of them 1,000-yard receivers, and you're going to replace it with a couple portal assets, or at least that's the expectation, is to replace it with a couple portal assets. It's going to be Interesting to watch the development over time. You bring in Xavier Townsend from UCF, you bring in Chase Sowell from ECU. Both these guys are definitely going to be guys that we expect a lot out of, especially as it's weird when I say we and a lot of these. I'm talking from a perspective of like college football media, and even though I'm not a credentialed media member, I sit here and make content. I study the game like anybody else. So when I say we, that's what I'm saying, and that's what I'm trying to get at. A lot of people are expecting this receiver room to be just as good as last year, maybe a little bit down from last year. I guess that would probably be a little bit more fair to say. And I think that I'm really excited for Chase Sowell. I think that he's a guy that I know a little more about than the Xavier Townsend from a perspective of what he can bring to this team. And he can play a very similar role to either Noel or Higgins. I think he fits a little bit more into Noel's play set and play style. Xavier Townsend's kind of a different style of player, a little bit faster, a little better in space. He'll be interesting to watch, see how he gets plugged in. They also have Daniel Jackson and Eli Green coming back. They're expected to take a good portion of receptions as well. At tight end, you got two guys who are going to rotate in and out, and we're going to see some 12 personnel. Ben Brahmer and Gabe Burkle, two guys who can get dirty in the trenches, who can go out there and catch some passes. They're going to be fun to watch as well. This is a really fun offense at the surface. Just kind of, once you dig deeper, how do they mesh together? And how do these wide receivers progress throughout the first couple weeks into the later portion of the season? And you got to figure it out early. You get less time than everybody else. You're playing in week 0 in Ireland against Kansas State. Farmageddon, I mean, it can't get much better than that. Could be on, one of their home stadiums, home fields. But beyond that, it can't get much better than that. And you're going to have this offense ready to go because that K-State defense is going to be good. They're going to be a lot of fun to watch themselves. You look at the Iowa State defense, and a lot of the biggest storylines came out of them last year was injuries. The whole linebacker room really got hammered, and it started with Caleb Bacon. He got hurt in game 1, did not play again last year. He's coming back. Should be kind of a returning starter, but since he didn't start last year, it's not technically counted. But they do have 6 returning starters. I'll go 7, counting Caleb Bacon. But they also bring back Cale Brazina, who is going to be a backup and going to be a sub linebacker. He'll come in and out of the game as necessary. Also got Will McLaughlin and Cooper Ebel. Hope I said that right. Those guys, I think, are like the center of this defense. It is going to be really exciting to watch how they play this year. And again, just staying healthy. That's the biggest thing. You don't want to get down to your 3, 4, 5 guys. In terms of linebackers, they'll kind of rotate them in and out and play them wherever they can, especially in sub packages. But it'll be interesting to watch. This team last year gave up 5.8 yards per play. And a lot of that was just due to the fact that they were struggling up on the front 7, especially at linebacker. It just kind of... I think that really hurt a lot of potential that this defense carried with them. They gave up 7.1 yards per play over the last 3 games, and that includes, again, the shootout with Miami. That includes getting the doors beat off of them by Arizona State. And it also includes that Kansas State Farmageddon game that closed the season out, which they ended up winning 29-21. They're looking for some improvement there, and again, I think that health at linebacker really is going to help that go forward. The secondary looks good and returns a good portion. Really, biggest place to look here is Jontez Williams. They're excited about him, but they're also excited for transfer Trey Bell coming over from Lindenwood. He's expected to start and be a immediate plug-in in the secondary. Curious how that's going to work out. I'll always kind of sit back and say, okay, let's wait and see on FCS to FBS, especially FCS to Power 5 transfers. I'll be interested to see how Trey Bell fits into this defense. They also bring in Tamatoa McDonough. Man, that was close. Tamatoa McDonough, edge rusher from Yale. He's going to be expected to plug into this defense as well. And he's expected to be a bench piece on some places, and he's expected to be a starter on others. So, depends on where you're looking. But I think that McDonough is going to be a player who we see a good portion of as well throughout this season. When you look at leaders, it's Cooper Ebel coming back, leading the team in tackles and returning tackles for loss. 69 tackles, 6 tackles for loss. Nice on the tackles. The team had multiple players with 1 sack. They had 16 total sacks last year, looking to maybe improve upon that. That's just a little over 1 per game. Hoping to build upon that. The team is looking to kind of get back to what they did last year in terms of forcing turnovers and creating those turnover opportunities. Remember, that's interceptions and forced fumbles. I don't really talk fumble recoveries because that stat can be that stat may not tell the whole story of how good this team may have been at getting to the ball and creating that opportunity. So I like to utilize the term opportunities versus forced. 15 interceptions, 8 forced fumbles last year, and they have Jontez Williams had 4 picks himself last year of those 15, and then multiple players had 1 forced fumble. At least those they're returning. Multiple had 1 forced fumble. Looking to see kind of how they can continue to work on that and look to really get in the backfield. I'm excited for Dominique Orange. He's a guy that I had really highly rated in my defensive line rankings when I did my top 10 list back in May. It was. So Dominique Orange is a guy I'm really excited for, see where he can kind of help lead this defense. I took a look at names to watch, and so I've kind of taken away the thoughts category here. I normally kind of wrote out a paragraph, said what I had to say. Now I'm looking a little bit deeper. We're looking at names that I really am excited to see how they kind of progress into this offense. For me, it's Xavier Townsend and Chase Sowell at wide receiver on the offensive side. Again, they lost Jaden Higgins. They lose Jalen Noel. And they are really they really need it to improve, because that leaves 1,200 yards that they did not account for out of 3,500 passing yards last year. Those were the 2 obvious favorites in the category of when it comes to Rocco Becht. We just did Miami yesterday. When it comes to Rocco Becht and who he liked to get the ball to. So again, excited to see how they plug and play into this offense, because that's going to be a big deal in how their success pans out over the course of the year. Defensively, against the linebacker room, they just fought through a lot of injuries. Really excited to see if they can stay healthy. How good can they be? How good can this defense be? Because remember, this team gave up over 5 yards per play, 5.8 to be exact, and still only gave up 22.9 points per game. That tells me they were bend, don't break, especially earlier in the year. We'll see if they can just kind of lessen the bend and continue to not break. That'll be the interesting way to look at it for me this year when it comes to the Iowa State defense and linebacker room. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at this schedule here, because they've got an interesting one. Obviously, it starts in week 0 with that trip to Ireland against K-State. South Dakota is not necessarily a slouch of an FCS team, but I mean that's a game they should win. And then you get the Cy-Hawk Trophy. Then you get a road trip to Arkansas State, and I'm not saying Arkansas State's going to upset them. I'm not even really hinting at it, but Arkansas State's going to be an interesting team, and they got some dynamic offensive players that I think can kind of show some issues that may be had later in the year, especially when this is your 4th game in. Like, you kind of already know what your issues are and where you're going to be. They're going to be on their 4th game. Everybody else will be in week 3, but they'll be in game number 4 at that point. Arizona, road trips with Cincinnati, Colorado, TCU, and Oklahoma State. Not necessarily a light path on the road. And then you also include BYU, Arizona State, Arizona, Kansas, Iowa at home, even though that's non-conference. They'll be interesting. Again, just kind of going through this schedule, how they can maneuver it. BYU looks a little bit lighter now, especially coming out of a bye week. It looks like a really solid opportunity to win. But you also have, again, you just kind of pair it up with those tougher road games. It's going to be interesting. Over-under sits at 7.5. Drinking word, interesting. If I keep saying that word, we might be in trouble. Odds to win the Big 12 plus 1,300, and the national championship odds are plus 28,000. They are, this is only 7th, by the way. 7th best odds to win the Big 12 at plus 1,300. That's pretty close. And obviously the Big 12 is just kind of up for grabs. Anybody can win it any given Saturday. Somebody can win a game and take somebody out of contention to make it to Dallas. So let's go ahead and talk about this Iowa State team. are they the team that's going to make it to Dallas, or one of the two teams that will make it there? They'll start out with that game against Kansas State in Ireland, and I think that this is going to be that test to show that their offense, or their defense has improved. What I'm looking for is who's going to take better care of the football, and currently I'm trusting in Rocco Becht a little bit more than I am in Avery Johnson. Even though I love Avery Johnson, think he's an awesome player. I'm excited to see how he can improve. But for this week 0 game, I think it's going to come down to this Iowa State linebacker room proving their worth from the very beginning. Cyclones will get a hard-fought win over there in Dublin. They'll get a win over South Dakota before they come back and face the Cy-Hawk Trophy game against Iowa. This game being in Jack Trice, really the home team has kind of had the advantage over the last handful of years, and I think that continues in 2025. Iowa State gets the job done. Road trip to Arkansas State, they'll win, but it's going to be, I think it's not going to be quite as easy as 52-7 was last year. I don't think it'll quite be that bad again, just simply because there was improvement from Arkansas State, and they do have a good amount returning. But it's going to be a win. I think they'll control it. Not something you need to worry about. Coming out of a bye week against Arizona, they'll get the win there as well. That's just simply, I trust this team coming out of a bye week. I trust the experience on this team. And I think Arizona really is kind of sitting back and wondering what their identity is. They're still kind of figuring out the Brent Brennan era. This is going to be a game that kind of, I think it's kind of I don't want to say a turning point in the season for either of these teams, but I think it's certainly a tone-setting point in the season for Arizona in conference play. You get a road trip to Cincinnati. I think they'll get a win at Nippert Stadium. This is a tough one. Probably the easiest conference home game or conference road trip they take, but it's not a light game. That's not a light place to play, and Cincinnati, I think, is going to be improved this year. Really excited for what Brandon Sorsby can do. Evan Pryor, Tawee Walker, sorry. We've talked about this team already, but Iowa State, I think, will just be better overall in this one. A road trip to Colorado, and that's where the first slip-up's going to come. I think that Coach Prime's going to have these guys ready to go. Colorado's not a bad team. They're really hampered by a brutal schedule. They get some of the best teams in the conference. I think I said they have the top 7 teams that I project in this conference on their schedule. That is not a light way to go. So, but this is a big win. This is one that kind of sits back and says, okay, Colorado's not bad, and they're a team that everybody needs to keep their eyes on. You get a win over BYU coming out of a bye week again. I think that just all the offseason drama, all the distractions over the course of this offseason are really going to kind of hinder the progress of this team. It'll be interesting to see there it is again. I'm looking forward to seeing what this team can be in 2025 without Jake Retzhoff. You move on to November 1st, a home game against Arizona State, and I think they're going to trip up the Sun Devils, kind of get their revenge for last year in the Big 12 title game. Simply put, I just think that everybody's going to slip somewhere. Iowa State, this is probably going to be a night game. If I were to guess, this is a night game. That just plays into the hands of Iowa State. We know how tough Jack Trice Stadium is to play at night. They'll go on the road to face TCU. They'll take their second loss there. I think this TCU team is that good. This is a team that's going to be competing to go to Dallas themselves, or Arlington, I should say. Go and play at Cowboy Stadium. They will be very, very good this year. I do not doubt it whatsoever. TCU, Baylor, Texas Tech. Really pick your Texas school in the Big 12, and they're probably going to be at least pretty good. TCU will get the win. They'll close out with a win over Kansas and a win over Oklahoma State. I'm not going to spend too much time on either of these. I think Kansas is better than Oklahoma State, but I think neither of these teams are really going to be, I don't want to say competitive, but I don't think it's really going to be games that we're too concerned about at that point in the year. 10-2, 7-2. They are going to repeat the 10-win season, get another one on the books, and I think that's going to be really interesting because then they can go and maybe even take that next step into the playoffs potentially, depending upon how things fall. I'm not saying they're going to, but they could. But they could also look to match last year's school record setting 11-win season, which would be really awesome, I think, to do that in back-to-back years, depending on bowl matchup, or maybe even they make that trip to Arlington and play in the Big 12 title game. We'll find out. We're still a little ways off of finishing up our preview season, but let me know what you guys think about Iowa State. Was I on base, off base? Was I close? Who knows? No, you guys will know. You guys let me know in the comments all the time, and I really love the constructive feedback. Again, I love people who just hate on it. Look, Missouri fans, I get it. You guys are taking you're taking offense to the fact that I put your team at 5-7. I get it. But, it's just a man's opinion. At the end of the day, that's what this is. That's what all these are in terms of predictions, are my opinion. As for what I tell you when it comes to what your team is and what you have to look for, those are all facts. I write everything down. I have lists of everything, depth chart, all kinds of stuff on these couple of pieces of paper in this book here. I wrote everything I could possibly write down to take as much information in as possible on these teams. And while some things do get missed, because look, I'm one guy trying to cover 136 teams. You think I'm going to get everything? Every single thing correct? Probably not. And I'm probably not going to get every single record correct. Like, there's room for me to miss. It always happens. And I don't mind missing. Look, missing just means I'm a normal human. I'm a normal person like everybody else. But I like to talk college football. That's why we do this. And I hope you guys will stick around, because, look, we do this all year round. And you don't know that because, we have not been here for a full year in the new rebrand. But over the last handful of years, you guys know that when I was doing Loudmouth CFB, that was a year-round show. When I did this stuff prior to a surgery last year, that completely knocked things off the schedule, this was a year-round show last year. Coming back this year, we are year-round, and there is nothing going to stop me from making sure that happens for you guys. And not only for you guys, but just because, again, we want to build a fun community, and we're trying to hit 200 subscribers by the time we hit week 0, which is 24 days away right now, 25 days away right now. I just appreciate the support. I appreciate the comments, and I have a lot of fun with this. My feelings don't get hurt. I have a lot of fun. I enjoy the back and forth, whether it's good, bad, indifferent. And again, I just hope you guys will join for the ride, because this is just a fun-loving show, and we got some really fun stuff. I mean, we're talking content 7 days a week from week 0 all the way until we finish the college football playoff. I mean, how fun is that? How good is that to have 7 days a week content all the way through the season? I mean, there's not much better. And you won't find another show that'll do that for you either. So make sure you stick around. We don't preach about the illustrious off season. We got 4 playing seasons. Or we got 4 seasons. We got the playing season, the football season, the on-field season. We got recruiting season, which basically is year-round at this point. We have transfer portal, of course. Of course, we have spring football. We have the non-playing season, as I like to call it, which really lasts from January 20th, 21st, until we get to spring football. And then we have the spring football season. Then when spring football ends, guess what? Back to preview season once again. It's a cycle, and it goes around every single year. But I'm just grateful to do this. I mean, this is not that anybody's giving me the chance to do this. I'm doing this on my own, but grateful that you guys want to tune in, and thankful for all the support. So I'm excited. Tomorrow we got Penn State. I'm pumped for that one. Really excited to see what they're going to be. They were an early favorite to be number 1 in my preseason rankings in 2025. It's probably not going to happen that way if I were to guess, but it's going to be fun. We also got a double upload coming tomorrow, as well as we are going to be covering Coastal Carolina. It was a request that was sent in the comments. I don't typically get to requests, but we haven't had any really this year other than the one. So Coastal Carolina is going to be double uploaded tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern as well. So really excited. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow with the Penn State Nittany Lions.